He's Jim Stewart, I'm Rick Collins, and this is Off the Bench.
Thursday night was really back to what we are used to. It was a rivalry game. Of course, the level of play wasn't what we expect. Well, it is what we expect of Thursday,
yes,
but it wasn't what we expect from the NFL. But it was a rivalry game, so I tuned in.
I know, I tuned in too. It's Lambeau Field, Packers and Bears, classic matchup, and it wasn't terrible football, but it wasn't the kind of football that we got this last weekend.
So the trend didn't continue. The trend of unpredictability did not continue on Thursday night, and it's not looking good for this weekend.
In fact,
unpredictability.
Our prediction was based on the fact of how unpredictable last weekend was, and so we thought, well, based on how
so our unpredictable predictions were predictable.
Yes.
Yes.
And the Green Bay Packers won pretty handily. The Bears with Glennon at quarterback. Everybody knows that Glennon isn't the quarterback of the future there, and they're wondering, when is Trubisky going to be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears? Why wasn't it last night? Why didn't they just take Glennon out at halftime, put in Trubisky, let him play, because everybody knows he's the starting quarterback of the future?
Well, when Fox looks across the field at the Green Bay Packers and they look at one of the best quarterbacks, a lot have considered the most talented quarterback to ever play football, they see an Aaron Rodgers who sat 3 years behind Brett Favre. Now, he was sitting behind an iconic legend who's a Hall of Famer.
A little bit different than Glennon.
But they figure the longer you're able to hold him out, the more he'll learn the offense, the more he'll get reps, and the faster
everybody's afraid of the David Carr syndrome, right? You throw in a quarterback on a team that can't protect him, and he gets destroyed and really never recovers.
And rightfully so. If you watched last night, Glennon got destroyed. Clay Matthews Jr. was able to accomplish something in the franchise that's very important. He became the all-time sack leader for the Packers with a strip sack. And Glennon was under pressure the entire game, 2 picks, 1 touchdown. It was a real struggle, but that's what happens when you have a okay quarterback with a bad offensive line. You get unpredictable on the offensive side. It doesn't matter the players and it's showing, no matter what players you have, if your quarterback and offensive line aren't good, you're not going to have a productive.
But we also thought that Green Bay's offensive line was a disaster, and without both of their tackles and then losing another tackle from last weekend, they didn't look that terrible, and maybe that says more about Chicago Bears defense than it does about the Green Bay Packers offense, but they were able to move the ball with a little bit of frequency, and they were able to score touchdowns, which is the most important piece of it.
Out of everything so far that's happened in the NFL, Packer injuries on a gamely basis is a trend you can almost bet on. The Packers have lost their two starting tackles. They've lost their starting running back. They've lost their second wide receiver in Davante Adams.
Yeah.
He's not the number 2 on the depth chart, but this year when it comes to stats, he's number 1 or number 2 on their depth chart when it comes to yards and receptions. And that was a crazy hit. We'll go over it a little bit later. But this is something, no matter how good your quarterback is, they can't overcome, or a legend or a possible future Hall of Famer cannot overcome constant and very vital players getting injured. They just can't. It's going to come to a point where a threshold is passed where it doesn't matter that you have Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And we're getting very close to seeing that with the Packers. And I don't think it's going to be good for the NFL, because everybody was looking at the Packers the last couple of years as being the Patriots of the NFC, ones that are reliable consistently in the playoffs, consistently in the NFC Championship game. But they've always had to overcome injuries. Just look at what happened, was it last year or the year before, when Aaron Rodgers goes, guys, relax. The reason why he had to do that is because the injury bug hit their team like crazy, and they started losing games. So I don't think he's going to be able to relax us this year because of the amount of injuries they had.
Yeah. So let's look at what happened with some of the injuries. Last night, Montgomery gets injured. He broke a few ribs. He's going to be out for some time. They've got a rookie running back who actually ended up scoring a touchdown and getting his first Lambeau leap, which is exciting for him. But
that's an NFL institution right there.
Scary in terms of the Packers' future in 2017.
And it forced them for, I have no idea why it had to force them to do this, but now they're going to start using Aaron Ripkowski a bit more. He was the Mike Allstott of the Packers last year. He had limited amount of carries, but he did a lot of damage to a lot of teams last year. I think he's going to have a more drastically improved role on this offense. The other side is that some of the mainstay players on this team, the Jordy Nelson had 2 touchdowns, which makes him have 5 on the season. He's the top touchdown receiving
wide receiver in the league right
now. Behind him is Diggs for the Vikings.
Yeah.
Diggs
Who would have ever thought that the 2 leading wide receivers in the league would be from the NFC North?
No, you wouldn't think that. You would. The last couple of years, it's either been in the AFC, or it's been in the NFC East, where the Cowboys with Tony Romo were just throwing touchdowns like crazy, as well as the Redskins.
Yeah, Cousins. Yeah.
So, I guess the question becomes, what did we learn from this game? Have we learned that the Packers and the injury bug can devastate teams? Which, yes, that's true, but you usually don't see devastating injury results.
Well, it was one of the reasons I picked the Lions as my NFC North winners this year in my predictions, was because Green Bay has so many injuries. They did not have a starting running back who was a known commodity. Montgomery started last year because of injuries and was starting at the beginning of the season. Now he's out. I think my prediction's coming to light there.
And one of the big moments last night was when Davante Adams got smashed. The question is, was it legal, and will there be ramifications? Next.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Davante Adams was taken to the ER last night after a devastating hit from Trevathan. And Trevathan was interviewed afterwards saying that, he doesn't think it was a dirty hit. What do you think?
So, spearing is part of the football laws, that you are not allowed to use the crown of your helmet. In fact, Article 8F states, if a player uses any part of his helmet or face mask to butt, spear, or ram an opponent violently or unnecessarily, although such violent or unnecessary use of the helmet and face mask is impermissible against any opponent, game officials will give special attention in administering this rule to protecting those players who are in virtually defenseless postures. He was a defenseless postured player. He was in the process of being tackled. He was not moving forward on the field.
He wasn't struggling forward, yes.
No, and Danny Trevathan came in, used the crown of his helmet, and hit him in the head. Now, did he mean to hit him in the head? It doesn't matter in accordance to this rule.
And this wasn't, I don't think, a perfect moment like from the Bengals where he purposely seems to go out and try to hurt people. The second Trevathan hit him, he took his helmet off. He was
showing concern.
Showing concern. He wasn't like getting all amped up, I made this huge hit. But at this point, it doesn't matter. They're trying to end that practice. But I do not think they're going to be able to end it by saying, hey guys, we're going to fine you, hey guys, we're going to suspend you. I think it goes deeper than that. I think this kind of tackling is so ingrained into the reaction and the instincts of these players that it needs to start happening at the youth, high school, and college level, and they're starting to do it in college now.
And there's questions about, should we take contact out of the school grade system for contact sports? And obviously football is one of the mainstays of contact sports at that level. if you take the contact out of it there, then where do the players learn to play in contact? Because if you don't teach them how to go into contact and make a hit, make a tackle, or as the runner being hit, how to go down in a safe manner.
Or to take a hit.
Exactly, to take a hit, then they never learn, and this just gets worse.
So what does this become, 11 on 11 football? Because if you take out contact, offense and defensive lines don't matter. And it's basically a quarterback, a snapper, and
7 on 7.
7 on 7. So I think it goes a little bit deeper. I think this is another decision that if NFL and football as a whole, the community decides to do this, it's going to have massive ramifications 5 to 10 years from now when these players that are in these youth positions get to the college and NFL levels. Because if we're struggling now with tackling, imagine throwing people into a college environment where
they've never
tackled
before.
Anybody ever. So what that's going to do is it could do anything from making it so massive injuries happen in the college and pro levels all the way down to there will be an underground football league or football training where they go and they learn to hit.
The new XFL. Yeah. But think about just what it's done for NFL players at the NFL level, limiting the amount of contact during the preseason and what we've seen so far, the amount of injuries stacking up, the number of concussions happening. It's all going to continue happening.
Level of play has been down. This is not the answer. The answer is teaching proper tackling. And what the verbiage needs to change. NFL players don't know how to tackle. I mean, some do. You know, some of the big time tackle people like Clay Matthews,
Sean Lee.
Yeah, Sean Lee. A lot of these linebackers do. But these big hits aren't coming from those players. These big hits are coming from safeties, from players that are taught to hit. The NFL as a whole is a hitting league. It's not a tackling league. Tackling is form tackle, shoulder to the body, shoulder to the midsection, head behind the back hip, and wrap and bring down. That's tackling. But in NFL and in football in general, an inch means everything. Mm-hmm. They are trying to stop someone dead in their tracks. And with that kind of mindset, you're never going to get proper tackling.
Yeah.
Because in proper tackling, the guy could drag you for a couple yards and then you still bring him down. And that is a proper tackle. I don't know. I think it's the mindset. And people like the Seattle Seahawks have started making this change. They've brought in rugby players, professional rugby coaches, and they've taught form tackling. They use the donut. Donut's been a big thing lately.
Yeah, we're seeing it a lot on the West Coast, even with the college level teams bringing in coaches from rugby or players from rugby to help with tackling, because especially when you're talking about the West Coast offense style, spreading the field and everything, it's so important to be able to make tackles in the open field that the tackling is way more important at that level than the hitting.
And you're seeing now these bigger, stronger wide receivers coming out. Someone like anywhere from wide receivers to tight ends, like a Gronkowski or a Julio Jones, who
Bryant.
are 220 to 260 pounds. A hit isn't going to stop him anymore.
Yeah.
A hit is going to be absorbed and dropped. You might slow him down, but you're going to fall, and he's going to continue going forward. You got to form tackle these people now. There's just no place.
Well,
in
also,
the NFL
and the form tackle is a lot safer. We talked about head behind the hip. The reason you would put your head behind the hip is so that you don't get a knee to the face or
you take your head out of the equation.
Your head landed on. You take your head out of the equation, exactly. And so learning form tackling is a way to protect the hitter, the tackler, and the person being tackled.
And we've been pushing this for a long time. We're very big advocates. We played rugby, but if you look at the statistics of both games, there's more tackling in rugby, way more tackling in rugby than there is in football, but the level of CTE injuries is down. But when we get back, we're going to cover a little bit of what's coming up in the NFL next.
And, yeah.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Pacha. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? But now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
We're back. We're doing NFL preview, then we'll get into a college preview after this. But Cowboys and Rams this weekend is the biggest game, especially locally, at AT&T Stadium. The Cowboys, 2-1. What we thought was going to be very difficult for them to get to a winning record at this point of the season, and even to keep it through the next 2 weekends. They had the hardest schedule in the NFL, so we know it's going to be challenging. For them to be 2-1 at this point, I think is a pretty big success. The Rams, we thought this would be a nice break in their schedule. I don't think that's the case anymore.
No, what has happened is we have learned that the Cowboys have struggled mightily against heavy run defense, and the Rams have one of the best front fours, if not front sevens in the NFL.
And we keep saying that. It seems like every week with the Cowboys we've been saying they're going to play a defense with a great front four. That's just the case. They are.
In the first 4 weeks, they've played 2 to 3 of the top defenses in the NFL, and one of them they overcame, and it could be 2 of them they won't. This team now has Aaron Donald back, the best defensive tackle in the league. They've got 2 or 3 linebackers that, as a core group, really do suppress the run. And then they've got cornerbacks that are surprisingly, even though they're not huge names, they're surprisingly doing a good job blanketing a lot of these.
They've had fantastic success on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't think there was a question about their defense. I think when you looked at the last couple of years, the problems that they had were on offense, and that created problems on their defense. It wasn't the defense themselves. Now
we were on the field for so long.
Yes, exactly. They're on the field for so long that it was just inevitable that they were going to struggle. Now you look at it, and their offense is a success so far in the season. Is Jared Goff coming out of his shell? Do we think he's a legit first-round pick? Because we were talking about bust before with him.
It is really starting to show how important the system is. Because under Jeff Fisher, who is a archaic, he ancient offensive coordinator, he had no unique or creative style in his offense. It was line up in the eye, throw it down the field, and hope to God someone catches it. These newer coaches coming in, and they hired a 33-year-old head coach who has come in, and they're usually offensive coordinators. And he has done a great job getting Jared Goff more comfortable with this offense. They hired in a guy named Cooper Kupp, who is a 4-year senior out of college. He's developed. He's an intellectual as well as has great hands and good route running. And when you couple those two things together, creative play calling and basically a possession receiver coming out of college, you have chances of having a medium to good offense, because that's all they need for this. If you really want to see a team, it's not to the extent, but if you really want to see in that team identity that this Rams team can identify with, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the early 2000s. Yeah. Great defense, pretty good offense, and all the offense needs to do is keep the defense off the field to let them rest and then let them.
But I've been surprised with the way they've been scoring, and Todd Gurley has come back into his own. I don't think Todd Gurley ever left. People thought, he'd kind of fallen off last year, but Jared Goff struggled so much last year. There was no way that Todd Gurley was going to beat 8-9 men in the box every night. So Todd Gurley supporting what Jared Goff's been able to do in the air. This is an offense that's going to challenge the Cowboys defense, which you're talking about the Cowboys defense that's suffering from a lot of secondary injuries. Their front four has been amazing so far, but do we see their front four having as much success against Goff, who's getting the ball out quicker? I'm not sure they'll get to him fast enough to really slow down what St. Louis is doing, LA is doing right now.
The issue also becomes that they are now starting to get also injuries on the defensive side. DeMarcus Lawrence is doing a good job, but his defensive end mate on the other side is injured, I think that they will pull out a victory, but I think it's going to be close. This is going to be a close game. I know we keep saying that, but these two offenses are not high scoring.
No.
They're just not. And so whichever defense is tougher, whichever defense can stop the run, because they're both predicated off the run, Todd Gurley and Zeke Elliott, I think that's going to be the deciding factor. Who has a lower, who can stop the other team's run?
We got to get into the other games. I'm calling it the Ohio Toilet Bowl. Right now, you got two teams that are 0-3, Cleveland, Cincinnati playing. Does anybody watch the game outside of Ohio? I think is a huge. I'd love to see the numbers. We may have to look at the numbers next week.
These two teams have forced themselves into a blackout. No one's going to watch this game, even though it's on TV. Both teams are garbage, and surprisingly so with Cincinnati. They were the last couple of years projected to be good teams, but as a whole, the organizations are starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
The next is two 2-1 teams in the Steelers and the Ravens. This used to be the matchup we all waited for every week.
This game
season.
could determine who's going to win the AFC North, right?
They used to be bloodbaths.
Yeah.
Honestly, it used to be battle royales like you would see in WWE cage matches, and it really hasn't been that lately. You have an aging Pittsburgh Steelers, and then you have a young but really not inconsistent defense for the
Ravens. Yeah. Great one week, and the next week they give up 44 to the Jaguars.
Joe Flacco has really
disappointed so far this season, I think.
And I've been dropping the word really a lot, and it's because I can't think of anything else to say. Both these teams have been disappointments from what we've expected.
They've been lucky to be 2-1.
What their reputations have been.
Yeah.
Up next is Raiders Broncos. Now I think this is going to be a game we can look forward to. This is a matchup that's going to probably decide the division.
Yes.
You've got the best defense against one of the best offenses.
Well, don't count out Kansas City quite yet.
Yeah, that's true, but until they've proven more than 3 or 4 weeks
especially offensively.
Yes, that they can continue at this pace, you still have to believe that the Raiders and Carr, as well as a Simeon-run defense, a Simeon-run offense for Broncos, I think that it's a three-way race, but these two teams can decide who wins this because both of them have the ability to beat the Chiefs. They haven't had that opportunity yet, but they both have the ability to beat the Chiefs. We will see if that continues going forward. Then just a rundown, Panthers, Patriots. People have been talking all week that Cam Newton feels that, not that he feels, but people have thought that his body's breaking down already. He's taken a lot of hits the last couple of years, but Bill Belichick...
He's still in the top 10 of quarterbacks taking hits again this year, and Carolina's got to figure out a way to keep the defenses off his back.
And with Greg Olsen hurt, he doesn't have his security blanket, but Bill Belichick has now said that he is public enemy number one. He's still a threat, but the question becomes, is this even going to be a game that's worth going to? Because I think it's going to be a blowout. The only real that the Panthers have is Luke Kuechly in the defense and Christian McCaffrey on offense. That's really all it is to see, and I think the Patriots sweep. But coming up next, we talk college football, and that should be a lot more exciting this year than it has been in previous years. Next.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Back after I would say, an interesting NFL preview. I think the college football preview for this weekend is going to be a lot more interesting. What was interesting to me was looking up and looking for Thursday night NFL football and finding Thursday night college football. You had Texas against Iowa State last night, obviously. A couple of teams from the Big 12, or whatever they're calling themselves now, that they're not even 12 teams. Texas ended up winning, but it was a brutal game to watch. And I'm a Longhorn fan, and I really had a hard time keeping my eyes on the game because Texas offense is struggling. They can run the ball, but that's about it. Buechele is struggling as a quarterback, and Erlinger is sitting there on the bench, and they were showing him half the game. I mean, Erlinger probably should be starting in this offense, and I don't see how Texas is going to keep up pace in the Big 12 this season. There's no way that they finish top 3. I think TCU, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma are by far better teams right now.
And they're looking at their head coach right now and saying, why aren't you doing better? The problem is this isn't his team.
Yeah.
He hasn't been able to recruit. Actually, he has been able to recruit, but it was a small recruiting class.
But it's also, those are the, freshmen.
Yeah, that were recruited.
Yeah, and they're not, well, a lot of them aren't ready to play yet in college football.
He needs 2 or 3 years to be able to prove his system coming out of Houston. Houston, he had a very successful system in Houston with the talent that he had and the ability to recruit.
And these players don't match that right now.
No, and with Texas, he should be able to get into any living room this offseason and be able to recruit heavily. Now, I do expect them to be horrible this year. They're not going to be able to accomplish much, but Longhorn fans need to be able to look to the future.
Patience.
Yeah, patience. Red River Rivalry 3 weeks from now is going to be a bloodbath as well, but
you never know, though, because it seems like we've always talked about it's going to be a bloodbath one way or the other, and then it ends up being a close game, and we're all surprised.
But you know what the interesting part is? College football isn't about, it is about the playoff, but only 4 teams make it.
Yeah.
So people enjoy the actual matchup.
These rivalries mean a lot to the colleges, especially the kids who are on the campuses. Because this is what they talk about all year is, when's SMU going to play TCU? When's Oklahoma going to play Texas? When is Alabama going to play Auburn? Those are the big matchups.
And it's basically a party that is created around these. You could see tailgating for NFL, but tailgating for college is a whole nother animal. Moving on to the next matchup is Clemson going to be able to continue their path to the playoffs?
They've got a tough matchup. Virginia Tech's offense has really exploded this year after they did not have huge expectations last year and played very well. And this year they're stepping that up. And I think it'll be interesting to see how successful they can be moving forward. Virginia Tech is not a school that I think a lot of recruits think of in their top 10, but they're proving in that system that they can be a top 10 talented team.
What about tonight? USC.
So,
playing Washington.
Yes, Washington State. Washington State, surprised to see them ranked. Washington also being ranked. I mean, the Pac-12 is doing a lot of things this year. They got a lot of good young quarterbacks. USC has to win this game if they want to make the
And they
Final
have to do
Four.
it by a fair amount.
Yeah.
They can't keep it close. They're right on the edge. They're ranked at number 5. They're right on the bubble of the playoffs.
Yes.
They've got to hope that an Oklahoma, a Alabama, a Clemson
yes,
fall
lose.
apart.
Penn State.
Yeah, to Penn State, or Penn State falling apart so that they can slide up and take that spot. The issue is these 4 teams above them look very strong.
Yeah.
And their schedules don't look absurdly difficult.
No.
So USC has to make a statement.
They has to go undefeated for the
Sam
season.
Darnold needs to look like the player that everybody has bragged him to be. Everybody has anointed him being he's going to have the Heisman. Before the season even started, Heisman first round draft pick, first overall. He has not proven that. He's had 6.
Yeah, that conversation has slowed down quite a bit.
And he has thrown so many interceptions in the first 5
And I think you
weeks.
expect that of a freshman quarterback. You can't expect he's going to go out and not throw any interceptions, but the expectations were way too high on him.
Yeah, he had a good end of the season last season, and now when he came in, he has really slipped. And USC is a big program, and usually the quarterback for the USC usually gets a lot of play, but I don't see this being an easy fight for USC, even though it should be.
Yeah.
This is not the Pete Carroll-run USC Trojans.
No, and one of the reasons we're not talking about the Sooners and TCU this week is because both teams have a bye. TCU has the Mountaineers coming in to play the following weekend, and Oklahoma has Iowa State coming into Norman the following weekend. So those aren't necessarily huge matchups. We'll get into those next week, but that's why we're not talking about them this week. Talk about our other two local teams. We've got UConn coming into Dallas to play SMU. SMU's looked impressive, actually, so far this season.
Talk about a commute. UConn to SMU. The only thing
Halfway
worse would have
across the
been
country.
The only thing worse would have been UConn playing
Washington
UCLA.
or something, or UCLA, yeah,
It would have
exactly.
been horrible. But that team has actually not been doing bad. This is going to be a good matchup. Two, let's be honest, mediocre teams.
Yeah.
And like we said before, this is not about making the playoffs. It's about making a bowl game, which there's a billion of.
Yes.
And it's about entertainment value. That's all college football is. It's entertainment value.
And SMU has been entertaining this year. In fact, they played TCU a lot closer than a lot of people expected. And TCU's now a top 10 team. So SMU has a legitimate chance of winning the American Athletic Conference. I think it's going to be a good game. That should be exciting to watch. UNT travels to Southern Miss. That's another local team.
They're going to get smashed.
Not a big game. UNT losing to SMU looks really bad now. They have not played well so far this season. It'll be unfortunate to see, if they do get smashed by Southern Miss, because Southern Miss is not a great team either. But college football, I think we're going to have a big weekend in terms of 4 or 5 of these huge matchups. But then you've got Alabama's playing nobody. Oklahoma doesn't play this weekend. TCU doesn't play this weekend. It's a big bye weekend as well. But we're coming up close to Red River Rivalry weekend. That's a tongue twister. And that's going to be really exciting. We've got some great interviews lined up for that. And really something to look forward to.
This is Off the Bench.